So please be aware that we will be recording. There's also closed captions at the bottom of the screen if that's helpful to you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and mute my camera so that we can focus on the presentation. And we will be presenting jointly, myself and Dr. Knappich this evening. As we present, if you do have questions, please post those in the chat. We can pause during the presentation to respond to those, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss our LCAP at the end of our presentation as well. Just a reminder, we are in we've had a series of meetings leading up to this one. We've discussed the budget for next year. We've also discussed our instructional services goal. And then we will have one more meeting on March 27th. And the purpose of that will be to give an update on our budget for this year and make sure everything looks good for next year's LCAP budget as well. With that, I'll go ahead and move forward with tonight's presentation. This first set of slides is a summary and update on our metrics that we use to measure progress towards all of our LCAP goals. And this indicates where we are with all four of our goals. We have an instructional goal. We have our educational services, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about personnel services because most of the actions within that goal are part of our DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. And then not what we won't speak tonight yet about is our facilities services. So you can see the breakdown of where we are with met and unmet. We still have quite a few metrics that are to be determined because we try to use the most current data, and we are going to be receiving the results of our school satisfaction survey in just a few days or weeks, and then we'll incorporate that when we report our LCAP to the county and also to our school board in May. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Knappich to walk us through our Goal 2 metric slides.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, we're going to focus on the metrics, or the way that we assess the success of our educational services strategies. So on this particular slide, you can see in the left-hand column the metric. Then in the baseline column, this is from 2018, 2019, where we were. And then we have the desired outcome, where we want to go. And then in the next column, the 23-24 update, what we are pulling in terms of our data results for 22-23 and 23-24 actually. And also then in the last column, whether the metric has been met or not met. So that's kind of the outline of how to read these slides. I'm not going to go through every line item by item, but I do want to point out in the beginning that we are looking at our DNF rates at our middle schools and high schools. And so we are, and we'll be pulling data for this school year and measure that against the 2018-2019 DNF rates. So once again, that should be coming up at the end of March or into May even, because we'll have to pull data at that point in time too. We have ADG requirements. We wanted to go and increase by 2% the completion rate. And there you can see that we had a 49.2% rate in 2018-2019. We wanted to increase by 5%. And then here in 22-23, the last data point that we have, we're at 48%. And you can see as you read through the column that particular metric, that assessment measure, was not met. We're 1.2% below what our goal was. We are in recovery mode from COVID and increasing all of our metrics and performance levels. But you may be noticing that we have quite a number of not met. But once again, we are working towards achieving our goals. And over time, we will achieve them. And we had really, really strong baseline too. And so we have a little bit of a hill to climb, and we will. Graduation rates, you can see that we have it broken down into all students in the next column, or next row, I should say. the graduation rate for English learners. And you can see over towards the right, the percentage where we are in terms of the graduation rate for all students and for English learners. And by the way, just to point out to the public that there is a change in the definition of the graduation rate for English learners. And Dr. Anders, I'm going to turn it over to you because you have a little bit more knowledge than I do about that.
Sure. So when we look at our graduation rate for English learners specifically, it's important to keep in mind we've been receiving quite a few new students to our school district just in the past 2 years with conflicts outside of the United States. It's driving a lot of immigration to us, to the point at which the state has passed some legislation to allow a lot of those students that are immigration or immigrant students to have a 5th year opportunity to finish high school. So the state does count those against us as a 4-year cohort graduate, but they do then count for us as a 5th year graduate the following year. So it's a difference between the 4-year cohort graduation rate and 5th year graduation cohort rate. But either way, a lot of those students are just coming to us and contributing to that, especially with this subgroup when we're talking about English learners. It's particularly true. Also with that is addressing their transcript that comes to us and trying to adapt our coursework and make sure they have everything they need as far as a graduation requirement, whereas the coursework they may have completed outside the United States is uniquely different. So that sometimes takes some additional time for those students to meet all the graduation requirements.
Thank you for that clarification. On the next slide, we have the graduation rates for our socioeconomically disadvantaged subgroup. This is also known as the free reduced lunch student subgroup. And you can see where we're at in terms of the rate. We're just below meeting our goal. We have the homeless students experiencing homelessness rate there, and we actually met and exceeded it by 2%. The foster youth subgroup is too small to report, and therefore there won't be a metric for that. And then the last one at the bottom of the screen there, or the slide, is our students with disability, their graduation rate, and we exceeded it by 2.7%.
Just clarification on that foster youth. That's always been an item we can't report out on, but it is a required metric by the county and the state. So we do include it, even if we don't have a large enough population to report.
And when we do have a large enough population, we will report as required. On the next slide, we start out with graduation rate for our Hispanic subgroup, and you can see towards the right of the slide that we did meet that particular graduation rate exceeding 4.5%. Our suspension rate, you'll see there that we're just under where we wanted to be by a few students. The next two deal with attendance and chronic absenteeism, and both of those are not met. And that's something that across the state of California and across the whole United States that districts and schools are working through as we recover from COVID. And I know I keep on saying that, and that shouldn't be like an excuse, but it's the reality that we're living with, is that we have seen an uptick in student attendance issues since COVID, and we're still in the recovery mode, as is most schools and school districts across the whole United States. On the next slide, we have the dropout rate, the 4-year cohort graduation rate. And then our middle school dropout rate, once again, those are required from the county, and that being met. Our expulsion rate. And then the last metric on that particular slide has to do with the school satisfaction survey. And we'll be getting data on that, as well as on the next slide, we have a number of survey metrics that we'll be pulling data on once the satisfaction survey data is reported to us. On the final slide, on the metrics, next one, we have professional development. And we did meet that particular metric. And then we have the additional metrics there that we're still pulling data on.
So we have a question in the chat about accountability at elementary schools and what specifically are the interventions that will be implemented to improve academic progress. This is something that we discussed at our last LCAP meeting with our instructional goal specifically. What I can share is that we do have some action items in the LCAP that work towards that goal. One being our RTI intervention teachers and the funding we put towards that at our elementary sites. There's quite a few other programs. We do monitor, we had metrics and metrics associated with our goal 1 around CASP scores in English language arts and math. And so that's a key metric that we look at. We also report out on local indicators for our California dashboard. And what we use for that metric specifically is our local benchmarks. So looking at our assessments that we give locally to make sure students are at grade level or proficient.
Reading language arts and mathematics.
Yeah, in reading language arts and mathematics specifically. CASP also contains a science test in 5th grade. There's not as much accountability attached to that, but that is an additional assessment that we can look at. Dr. Knappich, do you want to add anything about our interventions at elementary?
Yes, we do monitor the interventions very closely to watch the success rate for reading language arts and mathematics. So each school by school, takes a look at that and makes observations about students who are receiving interventions, and then they measure the success of those programs based on student performance. I also want to add in there too that I mentioned about chronic absenteeism and attendance. That is another metric that's applied district-wide to elementary schools and to secondary schools. So we monitor attendance very, very closely. And that's how like student services gets involved when we have students with a high number of absences. We send out letters from the school offices that inform parents that there's an attendance issue. There may be meetings that are asked for so that student services and the school staff can talk about attendance. So that's just a couple of measures that we do in elementary schools.
Another question along those lines is progress for elementary students just for those struggling academically. Do you see if the other students are making progress? How do you address the needs of students who are at or above grade level? So when we give these assessments, all students participate. So we are looking to see how every child's doing, and it does identify if they are not just at standard but above or exceeding the standard. So do our local assessments do as well. What we've used for the past few years is a program, an assessment called iReady in math and English language arts. And one of the unique features of this assessment, and part of the reason we chose it, especially during distance learning and coming out of distance learning and the pandemic, is that it provides an individualized pathway for students, and it individualizes that pathway even for students that are at grade level or above. The lessons and curriculum in iReady goes into the 9th grade, basically. And so if we had elementary students that were at grade level or above, they were getting individualized lessons at their grade level or at their level of performance. And it was a really neat feature of that program.
One of the conversations that we had today with our elementary principals had to do with data and data points and how we're challenging students who are high performing. So that's going to be part of the conversations as we gear up and plan for next school year, because we're doing a pretty good job with working with students who need additional time, additional support to learn. Plus, we provide summer program, and we need to go ahead and ramp up how we're supporting and how we're challenging our students who need to be challenged at a higher level. So that's definitely on the radar. That's definitely going to happen. And I'm looking forward to those kind of results in the coming months. And we'll be sharing those out at the school sites too.
The next question was, are most chronic absentees because of illness or for illness. That's the most common cause of absenteeism. It's been a challenge the past handful of years because, the LACO and the state has requirements that we've communicated as far as not coming to school because of certain symptoms or requirements to return to school during COVID screenings or testing. So that's definitely been a part of that factor as well. Other things that contribute are vacations or trips that are scheduled during the school year. Those do contribute to that list as well. And those are usually the most common ones. There may be some unique circumstances outside of that. I'm going to go ahead and move forward, but these are great questions. And if there's more at the end, we'll happy to address those or pause as we go through the next handful of slides. Our next set of slides is just giving a budget update and reminding us of the action items that we budget for in regards to attaining our goal 2 goals. So here you can see a breakdown of our expenses in goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. We do not have any goal 4 budgeted items in our LCAP because those are primarily paid for with facilities or general fund or other resources to maintain our facilities. But you can see we have our budgeted amount in our first interim numbers. Our first interim numbers were generated in about October, November, and are not necessarily how much we've spent at that point in the year, but what we're projecting to spend on these items. And then you can see how it breaks down our total expenditures, where our carryover was, and then our projected revenue through the rest of this school year and what we project to carry over for next year. So where we stood at first interim, we were down. Our projected carryover was about 100,000 or so, 120,000 less than what we budgeted. So that helps us monitor. We are looking at second interim numbers and preparing those as we speak. So that'll help us determine where we need to be where we thought we would at the end of the school year. We will present those again at our next LCAP meeting coming up in March 27th. We should have numbers ready to share. First interim, the explanation of that is just a point in which we take a snapshot of our budget and project what our expenditures will be. And so we do first interim, like I said, October, November. And then we do our second interim currently right now as that's occurring. And then our actuals is what we'll report out on at the end of the school calendar year in June, July. So our next slide here is just looking at all of our action items associated with goal 2. So you see high school counselors, middle school counselors, Monterey teachers and administration staff for our community day school and our family services agency program. You'll see that increased considerably for this year. That was an item that went to the board back in August, September. Because we anticipated a significant increase in need. And so we've worked within the scope of that action item to provide the same type of services, just on a much more broader scale. The next item is our secondary initial credit summer school. That's trending downward at first interim. That's a split funded item between last year's summer school and the summer school we intend to offer this year. And so we anticipate that'll go down further because of some of the changes we are making to summer school this year at secondary specifically. Staying on goal 2, Our secondary summer school credit recovery, again, at first interim, it was projecting higher than what we budgeted. We actually anticipate that'll be less, so considerably less, as we, like I just said, have adjusted our summer school programs. Secondary risk interventions, interventionists, and elementary at-risk intervention specialists. Those are those items that we've been discussing a lot in the fall, as far as what we're able to continue next school year. PBIS training, we've determined that will go down as well for this year and will be removed for next year. And then a few more items on this slide that are sort of requirements within our LCAP plan. Specifically, because this has been asked about, our school climate and mental health surveys through Hanover are metrics we have to report on. So we have to have a mechanism in our plan to bring that information in and report out on it. Our last slide is our goal 3 action items. And so just a reminder, our third goal is really about personnel, hiring, retaining, and training high quality employees and staff. And so a lot of the work we've done through this 3-year LCAP cycle is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you can see the items that we've been spending our supplemental budget on to do. Specifically, these items, we have a consultant that provides training that we then push out through a trainer of trainers model. And we use our site and our own staff to deliver a lot of that information to our sites. Facing history is an item that we've been able to complete. And so that will not be an item we will no longer need to continue. And that was one of our metrics that we had met. Our DEI mental health consultant, we anticipate that number is going to actually go down at second interim. It's been a vacancy, and I think we've determined at this point that we are going to freeze that position and not fill it. And so that dollar amount will be zeroed out. Our site lead stipends, again, this is our trainer of trainers model of our site leads getting and receiving information and guidance from our consultant and then delivering that message to our sites. They're also point people for students and other staff around this work. And then our last item here is our collaboration is opportunities for those site leads to plan together and work with other sites to deliver their professional development. I want to take a second. It looks like we have a new question about will the FSA budget be increased for next year? It's a really good question, and that's one we're having to wrestle with. A lot of our budget planning for next year was around what we had originally budgeted for this year. And so that's going to take a lot of attention to determine what our needs are going to be next year, how we best service our students, and how Burbank Family Services continues to be a part of that process. So I don't have an answer to that question this evening, but it is one that we have already identified needs to be worked through and discussed as far as Burbank Family Services role in continuing to provide that service and what we're able to budget for. Next set of slides is really a review of where we've been. A lot of the information we've been going through since November, December, and into January. So those of you that have been with us this entire time, this is going to be a little bit of review, but we always want to inform everyone that attends any of these meetings of some of the things we've been discussing, as these conversations are important and critical for next year. So this next slide is really just a snapshot of our population within Burbank Unified and our trends that we are seeing from year to year. These populations are specific to our LCAP, as they are the populations that generate the funding for our supplemental budget. They're also the populations we need to service and prioritize with our action items and what we do with our supplemental funds. The 2 or 3 areas that are important to look at is our overall enrollment and our free and reduced meal program enrollment. Those 2 populations are decreasing from last year. So we are experiencing declining enrollment as a district, like many other districts in LA County and surrounding areas. And we're also seeing a decrease in our students who need that free and reduced meal program. We've done a lot of campaigning to get people to fill out the free and reduced meal applications. We're looking at opportunities to incorporate it into our parent data confirmation and enrollment process for next year. So we're hoping we continue to promote that all of our families complete that application, as it's not just a free meal, it provides additional funding to our schools. The other area is our English learners, and that's actually trending in the other direction. We're experiencing a significant increase in the number of English learners on our campuses. And so that's been a point of discussion for next year, is how we provide additional services for that increasing population. So this slide is one that I might have went ahead. There you go. Sorry about that. Budget planning for next year. This was our original budget planning slide that we looked at from the fall and into the winter. And so you can see where we've been last year and going into this year, and where we anticipate we will be next year. So it's almost kind of incorporating 3 years of budget information. The important piece to look at, though, is this year we had a little over 2 million in carryover to be able to sustain us with our LCAP budget. Next year, we are looking at a much smaller projected carryover. So that means we're looking at about $1.2 million that we need to reduce our LCAP budget by. That's just based on our projected carryover. If you look at the next slide, we've actually proposed for adjustments to the tune of $1.8 million. This is about $400,000 more than what we need to reduce just to stay solvent with our budget. I'll explain why we're looking at that additional $400,000 on the next slide, but I want to explain this slide first. Is a list of the items that have been heavily discussed through the fall and through the winter. These are very, very challenging discussions, because all of these items are essential and important. Otherwise they wouldn't have been part of this plan. It's been anything that we're removing is painful, and so we recognize that we have a responsibility to be solvent with our budget and address the needs of our population. And so with that, the additional 400,000 that we are reducing, or excuse me, 600,000. I think I've been saying 400,000 this whole time. I apologize. 600,000, let me be clear, that we have reduced in excess of what we needed to cut just to be solvent. We are doing that in order to increase services to our English learners. And you saw on that one slide previously that population is increasing. The items that we're specifically looking at is opportunities or supports in our elementary classrooms. Typically, that looks like instructional aides or other personnel to provide either translation or additional support for instruction in those classrooms. But that's not always available. And we'll discuss that on the next slide. The place at secondary we would like to use these funds is to reduce class size in our core classrooms outside of English. We already have reduced class sizes in English language arts for English learners. We want to also create smaller class sizes in math, science, and social studies for classrooms that have a cohort of English learners in them. And so that's what we would be using that $378,000 to do. And that's primarily at our middle schools where we see the biggest need to do that. The last item is restoring a small amount of our summer school to really serve our special populations, specifically our special ed students who need to recover credits from the school year. So we have a small amount there to continue to provide that opportunity. So like I was stating in the previous slide, one of the areas we really are focused on is increasing services to English learners. And specifically at our elementaries, and not just elementary, but middle school and high school, we've had difficulty filling instructional aid positions. We've been flying them, we've been recruiting, doing a lot to bring those staff to our schools because we really need them for our students. But in situations where we're not able to fill positions, we've had to be creative with how we support students and families. And we've discussed some of those in our previous meetings, including technology, devices that provide translation that are either iPads or other technological devices. We've implemented some curriculum and instruction, a program called Snap and Read that provides translation for anything that's web-based, helps our students access assignments and their curriculum in their native language until they feel comfortable with English. Those are all examples. But I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Knapik just to speak on this a little bit. He's had a lot of experience with this topic and knows our elementaries in and out as far as where we can help them with this population.
So one of the great things that we've done is we have our ELD specialists at the elementary level. We have our ELD coordinators at the middle school and high school levels. And at the school sites, they serve as a resource to provide teachers with resources, curricula, and specific strategies in working with particularly English learners, immigrant students. And those strategies can also be applied to other students too. So students across the board, not just our English learners, immigrant students in particular, benefit from the work of our ELD specialists and our ELD coordinators. And they also work with our parent ELAC group and our parent DLAC group. And in those meetings, questions like this have been posed to families saying, what do you suggest? How can we better educate our children and support them so that they can go ahead and succeed in our schools? And therefore, we have gathered information through the DLAC and the ELAC to address these questions. And so it's been very, very helpful, those conversations, and very constructive too. So those are just a couple of strategies. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to mention too that our previous LCAP meeting and the one prior to that, we've been asking these same questions just to solicit ideas from our community. And a couple of suggestions that have come forward is the idea of a parent welcome center or support center that helps with things, not just academically, but making sure families have everything they need to be able to bring their kids to school, support their kids outside of school so that they can really focus on their education. Another idea has been to assist with parents partnering with each other or sort of a buddy system. There's a lot that parents can provide mentorship or help new families that are new to the country or new to Burbank. Those families that have been here for 6 months or a year have learned all those lessons and can really help a new family get settled into Burbank. Yeah.
And speaking about getting settled into Burbank, on Saturday, April 20th, the PTA, council PTA, the district level PTA is going to be offering an event at Memorial Field, which is behind John Burroughs High School. So that would be from 9:30 to 12:30. And the PTA is going and building this event so that we can bring in community resources. And we're going to be inviting our English learner and immigrant families, our transitional kindergarten families, and our kindergarten families so that they can learn more about what's available within the Burbank community so that parents and families can access services at these particular organizations. So there's more information to come. So I'm just kind of giving you a preview that this is in the works for Saturday, April 20th from 9:30 to 12:30 at Memorial Field, which is the football stadium behind John Burroughs High School.
Last thing I'd like to mention, and then would open it up to if anybody would like to unmute and be part of the discussion, is unique to the last year or two with English learners is that we're supporting a lot of different languages. Typically in Burbank, our English learner population has been a home language of Spanish speaking. Obviously, Armenian's been a big part of that too. As well, but we're also seeing an influx of Russian-speaking families, immigrant families from Ukraine, different parts of the world. So more and more, we are trying to support a wide variety of languages in our classrooms, and so that's a unique challenge just in the last year or two. With that, I'm happy to take any additional questions. I think we're caught up with the chat. I see one just came in, but if anybody does have a question or comment that they would like to add to the discussion, you're welcome to unmute. A question that just came in is, has BUSD thought about building more dual language programs, possibly an Armenian dual language program? A lot of research in supporting ELL students show that dual language programs help build success. That's absolutely true, and that's a very valuable point. We do have two schools with Spanish dual language programs. I say two, meaning our two elementary schools to get them started, but both those two elementary schools feed into Dolores Huerta Middle School that has a program, as well as Burroughs to support them all the way through their coursework. Armenian is a language we'd love to support. The challenges with our dual language programs is it's very challenging to find appropriately credentialed or appropriately credentialed teachers or teachers with that skill set to provide that unique opportunity. And Dr. Knappich knows that intimately, and I'll let him speak to that as well.
As Dr. Andrews was saying, it is a challenge for every school district when they do a dual immersion program to identify staff that are B-clad, meaning they have that special certification to teach in that primary language. So that's a challenge. There's also a challenge with curriculum materials. There's a challenge too with space. So when we open up a dual immersion program, let's say at an elementary school, we would need 7 classrooms at a particular school. So it could mean that over time, 7 classrooms are taken, and then we displace X number of students who would have gone to that elementary school, but then would be going to another Burbank school because across the district, we don't have 7 classrooms. And I don't anticipate that we're going to be having 7 classrooms available to us in the near future. Yes, a school could have an additional classroom year by year, but once again, you're talking about reducing a school population by about 7 times 25, 175 kids just to be seated for the dual immersion program. And then there's the impact on middle schools and high schools. It's possible. We've definitely talked about it. And there's also the budgetary side of it too. So we'd have to go ahead and purchase materials, et cetera, to go ahead and support the program. So it definitely is possible. Within the LCAP, we have some monies that are dedicated towards the Spanish dual immersion. So if we did another language, let's say it was Armenian, let's say it was Mandarin, whatever language, we'd have to go ahead and have like a similar budget for that too. So that's another challenge. Once again, it can be done. We've talked about it. it's something that it's continually talked about. So if it's possible and it's doable, then yes. But once again, there's no firm plans today, though.
Great suggestion in the chat as far as partnering with local colleges and universities to build that pipeline. We've been doing that work already, not necessarily with dual immersion, but just to fill vacant teacher positions. It's getting harder and harder to bring in qualified staff in our classrooms, and we're competing with other districts. So we have to be creative in building those partnerships with CSUN and some of the other teacher prep programs in our area. And been happy to report that we've been doing that and changing some of our practices to take advantage of those students that are freshly graduated. Yes, declining enrollment is accurate. So something to keep in mind as we look at our classroom and facility needs and opportunities to repurpose those classrooms for a program like dual immersion. Great. Do you discuss these challenges with the dual immersion programs with Glendale Unified? They seem to have quite a few programs. Can they offer advice? It's great suggestion and working with them. I know Dr. Oscar Macias knows their programs really well, having been there for the past year and rejoining us in Burbank, so he can speak to some of that too. But we do work with them, and they have a lot of the same issues that we have with our own dual immersion program as far as staffing. I know they support more languages across their schools, and so it's a great idea to continue to work with them on that and how they're able to maintain.
And then with dual immersion too, we definitely do reach out to Glendale, but beyond Glendale, we also collaborate with the County Office of Education and other school districts across the county that have dual immersion programs. You know, in my previous districts, and that's going back quite a few years, we had dual immersion programs too. So I'm a little bit experienced and versed in dual immersion programs. And once again, I am very willing and wanting to go ahead and explore, but I just can't make any commitments right now. Already.
Thanks again. I appreciate the dual immersion discussion. We'll bring that back to our leadership team and make sure they're aware that that was a big part of our conversation this evening. With that, if there's any other questions, please put them out there. Otherwise, please mark your calendars for March 27th. We will be reporting to the board through a special town hall meeting on our LCAP as it's prepared for submission to the county in June, or excuse me, late May. We'll do that, and then in June we'll have as part of a board item to take to the board for approval. So stay tuned. Reach out to Dr. Knapik or myself or any of our team with any questions about our plan. Okay. Have a good evening, everyone.